As we already mentioned, I'm based in Germany. So I'm working now for approximately 5 years for proMX AG. The company is based in Nuremberg, in the south of Germany. I live in Stuttgart. This is from a global perspective, it's quite close together. From German perspective, it's far away. But yeah, I'm married, have 3 children. My first contact with Microsoft Dynamics was about 10 years ago, where I have worked on the customer side after my study of business administration. So I was responsible for the application based on was version 4. So it was a Dynamics CRM version 4 at the time. This is how I came into this topic about 10 years ago, and since then, as you already know, or all of you know, a lot of things has changed in the last 10 years. My first contact with PSA I've had during the private preview of version 1, so this was in the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. This was approximately the same time where my first PSA project have started, and since then I was involved in more than 10 PSA related, or with the core component was PSA related projects in several roles, mostly as a lead business consultant or as a solution architect. If there are any questions about me, you just feel free to ask. About my topic today, PSA has evolved and changed a lot in the past years. On the one hand, certain areas are very strongly protected from a data point of view from Microsoft itself. On the other hand, some areas are open and enables users to accidentally enter incorrect or incomplete data, or to change data which they maybe should not change during a process. If you take, for example, price lists. Here the PSA team has overtook the price list entity from the sales module. And the price list is an organizational owned entity. That means everybody who is allowed to modify prices is allowed to modify every price list in the system. And this makes it difficult to prevent users from accidentally changing the original price list, which we attach to the organizational units, or which we attach to PSA core parameters in the system. But more about price lists in a bit. So come back to the topic data quality. I see data quality mostly in the context of commercial data of the project. And this is for me, or for the customers I've talked to, or which I have worked with in the past. This is a central point in the implementation of PSA. So how we can ensure that the commercial data in the system, the users enters are at least have a specific quality itself, so that we can ensure that we send out an invoice to the customer at the end, for example, for a period of time, that we have only correct data inside that invoice. This will reduce the discussion points a lot later on. Additionally, it matters if you, for example, if you're in your company, you have 20 resources and needs to handle maybe 10 or 50 projects a year, or if you have over 2,000 resources in your company and you have handled thousands of projects in parallel. So it's depending on the company size, how much effort you need to take to ensure the data quality, or what is the data quality itself at the end. But yeah, let's start and took in some key areas I have chosen for this presentation today. So for me, the key areas, or some of those key areas. So the list is not comprehensive or complete. It's only my thoughts for the presentation today. So there are some areas about the project contracts, the projects, time entries. We have in the previous session we have shown a lot about approvals, so this is not part of my presentation today, but it ends on the invoices. We should ensure along those entities and objects in the system, we should ensure the data quality so that all data is related to those objects have a have a specific limit of data quality. Without development, from my point of view, means that I am only using the tool set that Microsoft gives us as a consultant. That for me, for example, we can use additional fields, we can use roll-up, calculated fields, we should use business process flows, business rules in the background. Yeah, of course, we Power Automate, a lot of things are possible in the system. So, but for specific validations later on, and specific on time entries, we see that the usage of the classic workflows, mainly synchronous workflows there. So this is not a capability right now of flows to use it synchronous. But with the classic workflows, I call them always classical workflows. So we can set up synchronous workflows and can throw errors which are directly displayed to the user. So that's not not nice from a header line, but it's very effective to use them. Let's start with the first area, the project contract. I start with the project contract because the sales process in PSA is an optional part of the process. So in the project contract then is the first object that should be used in any case to have a full capability about the commercial data to be able to create invoices. The project contract connects to connect the billing side of the project with the project itself. And with the project contract, a large number of important entities are linked directly. So what can we do there, or how can we work with that? The system gives us many informations or countless informations in the background, which are not visible to the end user if we compare it to default form. So how many costs have been incurred, how many has already been invoiced to the customer, what are the next milestones maybe, or even if you take, for example, not how many invoices, let's see that the invoices are linked to that project contract. In an out-of-the-box system, I need to go to the related entities to show them. So data quality for me means as well to give the user all information they need to follow their process in the central point without clicking around and searching for informations. I've created for that presentation, I've created a demo system, a demo environment, where I now like to start to talk about a little more about things I have changed for the project contract. Let's see, where's the... Okay, let's move to the project contract area. We can start there. You see there, it's very the default view, the project contract status default view is very colorful. It starts for me to changing what does the customer sees to use, for example, some icons or some traffic lights on that to display, for example, trends or something like that, or to see the status of specific projects, to have a first overview along the commercial data about actual costs and so on, to have the right starting point to that. And if I go to the demo contract I created for today, we're seeing that stuff repeatedly. So in the middle, I have some KPIs. So if I open up the project contract, I can clearly see what is the overall status of my project, what happens there, and on top we see the created project contract and what happens there, or what I have created. We're starting with a new area, so that contract needs to be reviewed. Maybe this is the right customer, is the priority is set, or is it in the right manner? And if I switch to the next to say, okay, this is from my point of view, the contract is okay, it's right, can be handled in an internal review. I'm changing the status in the background accordingly along to the business process flow. So the rest of the statuses is completely locked in the system, and I'm only allowed to change the status if I'm moving to the next stages. So normally the business process flow, some of the users will use them, others will not use them. But if we ensure that the user will use the business process flow, then we have always an binding to that stages in the business process flow. We binding the statuses. Then we have always every contract, or later on as well the project, in the right status in the system, and this is important for example for reporting areas. To review for the next step, to review the rates approved, or are the contract lines are okay, and is the billing information approved. It's just simple 2 option fields there, but we can go, for example, to the rate card. This is also a change I normally do in a lot of projects. That means if you go to, or if you refer to a default system, you don't see directly the rates for specific resources attached to that contract directly. Normally you need to open the project contract price list, then click on the price list link to that entity, and then click on the role prices, and then you're on the same screen. So but with the flow in the background, or Power Automate in the background, it's quite easy to connect both entities directly to each other. Then you have the directly possibility to, for example, to modify specific rates for the project. You should do that before you start the project. After you have the project started there on the price list or on the linked entity, there are several fields for validity from beginning to end of price list, which you can use if you like to versioning of the pricing, but this is another topic. And we have some billing information. For example, I normally going to use to show the project managers, or what is the backlog in a time material perspective. This is currently empty, so we have no times tracked against, or no expenses tracked against the project contract. One milestone is attached to the contract line, I see there, and we have currently no invoices. In the contract performance, we see some roll-up fields, for example, which calculates the contracted amount out of the project contract lines. And for if we move ahead of the business process flow, I need to double check that. This is also an easy way, for example, to use quality gates between each step. So in the background, I can store who has checked that the contract lines are approved, yes or no. I can store it in some fields in the background, but if I don't answer it in a proper way, I'm not able to move to the next step. And what we have seen often is just a simple single step. So often companies need to ensure that the contract is signed from the customer as well, and this is why I have there a single step, which is only called signature, where I only need to confirm is this signed contract is received, yes or no. And if yes, maybe you should have another check there. Is the contract attached to the related SharePoint location? That the project manager has always the easy way to find the original project contract, which was signed by all of the parties. So it's always draft and in review. And if I move to the processing stage, for example, then we switch to the contract to active and confirm. This is the status you normally reach if you click the confirm button in the header, but it's also possible to set the status within workflow, which is linked or which is attached to the business process flow. This ensures that most of the data is not longer able to be modified according to the project contract. So if we later on, I will talk about how to close that. You see there, I cannot move along to the closing stage, or I can do it right now. I can move back as well. So let's switch to close completed. There are no ongoing projects. So I can mark that. So all projects are ended related to that project contract. And then I have some simple steps or some simple checks here. Are there unbilled sales records in the actual existing, yes or no? And if some of them existing, we cannot go further to the closure, proceeded closure states. The same for the unbilled milestones or unpaid invoices. Are there some milestones existing or attached to one of the contract lines which are not which have not been invoiced to the customer, or are there some unpaid or pending invoices in the system related to that project contract? Then you're not able to close that project contract. And how I did that in the background is pretty easy. As you have shown here, I have just used some simple roll-up fields which counts the unbilled milestones, for example. And if this value is greater than 0, then I using a business rule to set the unbilled milestones check to fail, not to pass. So due to the fact that all the fields are locked, so the customer, the user who is working with that system has no chance manually override that. So the only way to do that is to to change the unbilled milestones, to invoice them, or to delete them, or depending on the security in the background, to change data. This ensures that if we from the start to the closure to warranty maybe, or to archive the project, that we can ensure that the important data we like to have in the right manner in the system are accordingly. So, yeah. Have I forgot something? No. This is also what I meant, which to enhance the views. All of you which are familiar with the default forms and views from PSA directly see that it's not really the default view, but everything which was changed is only to maybe some additional custom fields there, like for the upfront payment process or for the warranty area. But the rest, like the rate cards, is only a little enhancement to show directly the rates, not the price list or the price list entity. The billing area is the same. It's only what you normally have in the transaction area of the system with approved times, the journals, actuals, and so on, only to show them directly on a subgrid, so that I have one point of view and don't need to click to related, switch to that area, and find all in that. Okay, that list is not that much big, but in a real project live, this could be thousands of lines in the background, and then I have to find to search to filter that data or to export it to find the related lines. It's much easier to have it directly pre-filtered in a specific subgrid. If we go to the project area, it's quite similar, which we have seen on the project contract. So it's also the same to use the business process flows, for example, to guide the user through the project process. You have decided they need the way they need to go, and in the background as well to update the statuses. To have valid data from a status point in the system. This can then be used to answer some questions, for example, at which point you're allowed to start a project, or when it's allowed to track time against that project, or under which circumstances the project can be closed, so or can be set to close, or can be is the closing process from a project. This is a simple step. You say, okay, we're now in an active state, and then the next step is closed, or is there more or less some time, for example, now you're in an active state and you set it to a pre-close state. This is the ability for a project manager, to example, to close down all the tasks, to create a final status report, to approve all the remaining times, but prevent the colleagues for tracking new times, for example, against the project, that he has a chance to close down the project. And then the same we have on the contract to enhance the form, to visualize or to see all the related data the project manager needs to be able to see on a project level. And I'm normally going to use I call it a settings area. So because where the project manager can set, for example, for some project, it's not sensible to approve every single time entry. So for internal projects, for example, you can set an auto approval. This is not what we have done in the previous session. I'm going to use, or I have used a traditional workflow for that, and calling the default PSA action to approve a time entry. So the rest of the stuff is handled by that action, or to set all approved time entries automatically to ready to invoice. So as you know, there's the default process says, okay, first a colleague is submitting the time entry, then the project manager or another guy who's allowed to is approving that time entry, and then you need to set that to ready to invoice before it can be invoiced to the customer. And this is a step normally some of project managers like to have it, others not. So they say, why should I approve it again? If I say the time entry is okay, then it can be invoiced into the next billing period. So for those, we have added or often we're adding here in the setting area just a simple field to say, okay, I like to auto-approve all, auto-billing all approved time entries. So let's take a look in the system again. Okay, so on the entry page, I'm normally going to replace the default actuals and estimates areas Microsoft has included, and replace it with the rest of the fields which are all existing, so like the hours spent or the schedule variance, estimated hours, to see from hours point of view, from a cost point of view, and from a sales point of view, to see, okay, what is the actual sales value, what was the planned sales in total for that project, what is the actual sales in number. Okay, this is a little bit doubling, but it's it's more graphical, and this is the real number. And what is, from the current point of view, what is the remaining sales, and then we have also some other area at top. And yeah, let's go through. The activities is only the normal timeline entity, the schedule. I normally don't change. This will change by Microsoft later in the next version. Then we have all related time entries, unapproved time entries for that project, and I have already as well some approved time entries there. And then a simple chart which shows me the monthly progress, how many times I have approved in June, for example. Team and resources tab I have a little bit modified. So we have the default team member subgrid, which has some overview chart on the right side to see, okay, which resources is assigned to the project, to see the hard booked hours for that resource, to see the assigned hours, and as well as the required hours, if this is different from each other. And then we have the assignments to each task below, which is in the default, which is an own tab. It's for me only additional information for the team and resource tab, and as well the reconciliation view to see, okay, is there any mismatching between booking and assignment for each resource. The billing backlog is something similar we have seen on the project contract, to have, okay, what is the time material billing backlog, like expenses, time entries, and so on, to see, okay, which of them are existing and what is the billing status there. Are they ready to invoice or not? Same for maybe attached milestones, we can attach to that. And then we have a status tab, which is more or less, the only custom entities there is for the project status report and the project risk matrix, to have an easy way to create status reports. If I create a new one, I have a simple quick create form, which automatically maps the currently estimated hours, the estimated costs, and the actual values. I need to add a comment. This is only a simple demo report, and let's update the overall project status as well. And then we have there some new additional lines in the charts. So currently they are all for the same month. So the date will update it accordingly in the background with another flow to have the today's date the same for the project risk. And then we have below the original tracking app for Microsoft to have a good overview of all planned tasks, the remaining hours of each task. So all of those information are very useful for project manager to plan or to manage accordingly the whole project. And this is the settings area, last but not least. So I have the same fields to check some values in the background. This is as well as we have some on the project contract. Some roll-up fields to have, for example, the number of not invoiced contract lines, to have the not approved expenses, the unbilled sales, actuals in background. Are there any ongoing journals in background that somebody has entered? If so, set this flag to fail, because as long as this is like it is, we're not able to close the project. And then we have some additional stuff here to have. Okay, is there any restriction for the time entry? That means for me, or to have a flag to say, okay, is it limited or is there none? So everybody can track a time against that project if it's in the right state, or only those who are assigned as a team member are allowed to track time against that project. Or the highest validation is to only allow resources to track time against the task they are assigned to. So to prevent lots of correction later on may be needed. Then I have auto approval activated, yes or no. Is the direct billing activated, yes or no? If I have updated the plan, this is now important for the first steps. If we go to the business process flow, and the more is always possible. So to have a simple point of view to see, okay, what is turned on, what is turned off, and to help the project manager to follow the creative process. So if I'm in the preparation stage of the project, so has the project manager been specified? This is for me always important, because in a default environment, the guy who is creating the project is automatically by default the project manager, and this needs to be changed to the real project manager later on. And this is only to double check: have we done that? Is the plan updated? Yeah, this should also happen at the beginning. And is the initial planning for the resources, is it been done? Yes. If so, we can start to initiate the project, the initiation process. You see the status on top, on the right top, is updating accordingly to the state of the business process flow. And then we have some, maybe is this an upfront payment agreement? We have some on the order as well. So if I change that, for example, if I say on the contract, yes, that's an upfront payment agreement. I need to do that. This is only a simplified version of upfront payment, but here it can be used. Now a flow is running in the background and is updating all related projects, but this can take some time. Let's see. It's not happened right now. Maybe one refresh, and then it should be visible. Okay, it takes some more time. Let's refer to that later. Then the same for that. If the project contract gets confirmed, Flow is updating all related projects that feel that, yeah, we have confirmed project contract. We can start with that. So that means we can ensure that billing can be done later on to that as well. Let's move ahead. And in the execute phase, I just have a simple field to say, okay, the actual start date was today, and then later on in the pre-close and in the close date, we have the check fields I have shown you right now. So that means if he is entering the pre-close date, we will not allow the users longer to track time against that project. We will prevent that. I can show it later on in the time tracking area. And but due to that, the project manager has enough time to double check all the rest of the time entries, to create the invoices before he moves on to the really closure state where we capture the actual end of the project. Then we maybe need to end a warranty phase for that project, maybe not. Then we can also have some conditions in the business post flow to show that field or to show the stage or not. And then the last step is then the archive option to move the project out of most of the views, to not have it longer available. On a time entry, from a time entry perspective, for me, it's always important to have the ability to limit the project and the tasks which are visible to the user to track time against. So in default, the only limitation we have there is that the task lookup is limited to the selected project, but the selected projects aren't limited. So it doesn't matter in which stage, even the inactive states, it's not possible, but all active states are possible to track time against that project. That should not be in the real world like that, so it should be changed. Then, for a simple example, entry data against the project is not really there's no approving for data before the project manager approves the record. So, for example, the description, is it entered? So users should not be allowed to submit a time entry which has not correct data, because if we do so, a lot of information or a lot of approvals need to be rejected, and to refine. So this can be handled with a simple check with a workflow before we submit the time. And if we decide to double check the data, we need to be aware of that. We need to have it on several levels. So first level should be if the user creates the time entry, the first check should happen. If the user tries to submit the time entry, the second check should happen, and the last check should happen before or on approval of the time entry as well. Because in the meantime, the circumstances can change. For example, if we say, okay, it's only allowed to track time against task as long the actual reported time is not exceeding the planned time for the task, and this circumstances change because and my colleague has already submit in 8 hours, and this 8 hours has been approved by the project manager, so maybe there's not enough space for my 8 hours anymore. For that, if you have checks like that in your system, you should perform all of the checks on 3 levels: on creating, on submit, and approve of that. If you decide to go for an auto approval for specific projects, for example, you can use the out-of-the-box actions Microsoft is delivering with PSA. You find them in the system under the approval steps in the classic workflows. Unfortunately, not in Flow or Power Automate, and there are all information available then, which you need to use them. Let's go to the time entry section. First on the project currently, so there's no restriction, so I'm allowed to track all time against all project tasks we see in the schedule. Nevertheless, I'm only assigned for the first task, so this is a really simple project, but for today it's enough. So I'm only assigned against the first project, the first task in the project, and if I enter a new time, I can select the project. It should be available. Here it is. And I'm able to select all of the related tasks. If we now change it, and it's only done by defining the filter criteria on the quick create for the lookup for the task or for the projects to allow the user to see those entries or not. The same if we decide, for example, let's make that first. So I say only, let's go to the highest level. Saving that and creating a new time entry. Selecting again my project. And now only the first task is visible for me. And I have the WBS ID is 1 and the rest available duration for the task is 39 hours. So this is a simple calculated field which in the default, which is using the planned effort for the task minus the actual reported hours against the task is the rest available hours for that task. And so it can simply be shown to the user that he has an easy point to see, okay, is there enough space for my time, yes or no. If you don't, I have it on the third place, maybe you can use it, can change it to the second place as well, that you have a WBS ID on the first or third or fourth information. Yeah, it can be changed. The same, I don't like to change that. What happens there if this could be really, if I move it back, and as I mentioned, it's not in the execute stage of the project, I'm not allowed to track time against that. But if I create a new time entry, for example, for that reason, this could happen, for example, if I'm in a pre-close stage, if I opening the project lookup and the recent view is activated in the configuration, it could happen that I still see that that project, even if I mentioned before, I'm not allowed to track time against that. So you need to be aware of the fact that if you're going to choose to use the recent views for the lookups, it could lead to wrong data. So in that case, you need to validate it afterwards. For example, if I now directly open the lookup, you see the project is not available for me to book against. So if I really look for the records, I'm not able to choose it. If I use the recent view, okay, no, the recent view is not open. Okay, let's save that. It is available. And this leads to the first check. This is done with an synchronous workflow in the background to say, if I try to save that, there's a business process error occurred, as mentioned before. It's not really the nicest way to show an error to the user, but it's an easy to configure way to do that, and it's very effective because the record cannot be saved if the checks is not successful at the end. Well, let's move the project one step ahead. And due to the fact that it can change the state of the project can state between the point where I have created my time entry and where I submit my time entry, maybe a week or 2 weeks after that. In the meanwhile, the project can be in the pre-close state, so they're no longer allowed to submit time entries, for example. And this is the way how you can handle that. So now I should be able to track that. So now I have one time entry, and if you use the time entry grid from Microsoft, there's one point. There's no the only hint Microsoft is giving to us that the external comment is attached to the time entry is this blue corner in the time entry that we see, okay, there is something attached to the time entry for that day, but this is rapidly overseen by the user. And if we open that, you see the external comments are empty. I haven't entered something into that time entry. And if I now try to submit that, another workflow is checking that. Is there a description is entered? Oh, okay, this is a non-working day error. This is another topic. Let's move it one step ahead to yesterday and submit the time entry. Then this a second error queue which says, okay, it does not contain an external description. Submit is not possible. Please update the time entry accordingly and resubmit it. That means if I now, like I've done it before, open that, say this is Dynamics 365 Saturday today, the presentation on that. Save it. Now we have the blue corner there, and I can submit it without any errors. If the auto approval is now turned on, it will directly auto approve the time entry, and will it directly set to ready for invoicing again. So for that, but because this website, we need to refresh it. See, there was that line. It's now approved directly, and the same if we refer to the project, to the time entries and expenses. It's not listed under the unapproved entries. It's listed here under the approval stuff for today, and the same for in the billing backlog. If we refer there to the same entry, it should be that one. It's directly set to ready to invoice. There's only some simple stuff to ensure that the data entered via time entry or when is the project is able to be bookable, or the same for the contract or on a contract level. Are some examples how you can use out-of-the-box functionality to ensure the data quality inside of the PSA processes of the system. And to use another sort of form visibility of some fields which Microsoft is handling only the background and do not show to the user. What I always love to use is to have some colorful PCFs, using PCFs for the progress, for example, or for the consumptions, to see there is some graphical, or to, if you have only 3 radios inside an option set, you can use that default out-of-the-box PCF control, for example, to include some charts inside of the form, for example, for team resource, because it's easier to consume the data which is included there if I see additionally in a chart. The same on the billing backlog or on the status perspective. There are some free to use PCFs available which are under the MIT license that you're allowed to use that. For example, for the risk matrix, to visualize the data, to have additional charts here, for example. Yeah. Easy customizings, but can enhance enormously the data quality in the system. Other areas which can be used, for example, is what we have done now, the status report or the risk matrix. If you're going to use the status report, maybe you should think about to automatically create one per month, for example, to have enough data in the system to have a proper reporting for that. Or if you decide to keep it manually, then you should ensure that each project manager is really creating those reports frequently. then you can use upfront billing scenarios. So if you agree with the customer that that there should be upfront payment for that contract, and then that means the project work cannot start before that invoice is paid by the customer, then you need to prevent the project manager to set this project to an execute stage. In the same way, you can handle simple split billing scenarios. So if you have, for example, if you have an agreement with the customer and the vendor of the software is paying a little amount for the implementation part, which happens quite often, then it's also possible with customizable extensions to have that simple split billing scenario inside, but it's not a real split billing. The same for the expense tracking. To enhance that expense tracking in the system, it's not really powerful out of the box, but you can really good enhance it. For areas where you need extensions, which should be which affords a development of those, is for example the previously form as I've used for the entry point is the price list topic. To secure those price lists, for me, it's a pretty important part to ensure that nobody is allowed to change the default pricing, because this will affect all, or not all, but many projects. If this is accidentally happening in the background, the same to validate the time entries we have seen before. To validate is the role is set up correctly in the background, so that a not available billing method could not occur, because this will lead directly to wrong data and need to be updated before invoicing. Otherwise, there could be lead to into some trouble. The not available status should only be if this is a fixed price project, for example, for the sales is not available normally. And the same, some of my customers are trying to use always not the assigned role on the project. They like to use always the default role for costing. So to set that accordingly on the time tracking in the background, you can use a flow, for example, or you can use as well some plugin. Baselining and snapshotting of projects is as well. The project status report is only a simplified way to do that for some key values. But to have really a baselining and snapshotting in the background, you need much more technology in background. So this is definitely a development area. And the same for modify resources, working time, like vacations, country-specific business closures, and all the related stuff. It's a pretty hard thing in the current version to solve that. It's possible, but you need a pretty good developer to modify the calendar rules in background. Here, and then this list can be extended to many other scenarios. Are there any questions from your side? Just looking to the time, we have 10 minutes left. Sure. You like to see the resource cost. That's a very good question. So you normally decide to go which I said, the classic workflow, so the old version before Power Automate. If I need some additional synchronous stuff needs to be happen, for example, for validating to really throw an error to the system, then I choose that way. Another option when I'm choosing the old way is if there's some things which maybe it's easier, for example, if I, like we see it here, if I move to the pre-close state, in that workflow, which is bound to that entry of the pre-close, is also a force calculate for all related rollout calculated fields included. This is pretty easy with the dynamic workflow toolbox. So you see there, it's all up to date. Otherwise, the rollout will only be recalculated every 12 hour, or it can be minimized to every hour, but it's not happening on entering a specific stage. So these are, if there's something is available in the old world, which it makes my life easier, I choose the old world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I think the main thing that I actually just wanted to ask is because we've got a requirement where the project team wants to book the same resource during a project process, but at certain times actually at different rates. So I was just wondering how to get around that.
This sounds like more or less in the direction of pricing dimensions. Because if you're only allowed to have, for example, to have a specific resource, with one role on the project. So you cannot use the role, or from a calculation perspective, or you say, okay, the resource is changing the role accordingly via time entry. It's also possible, but if you say, for example, the same person working as a lead consultant in a specific project, and if the project is in the starting phase, the rate is lower than if the project is in the execution stage, for example, then this sounds more or less like need to be solved with pricing dimensions then, and some additional fields in the background.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
If there, yeah, yeah, this is what I. There are some slides related to my employee to the proMX AG, of customers awards. We've had, then you find as well some solutions from us on app stores, for example, to have a multi-gun view to enhance time tracking, ready to use out of the box. Same for the approval. There are my contacts, but what is not mentioned here is my LinkedIn profile. You can also, like Priyash in the previous session, directly connect on LinkedIn and send me a message, or you can use my email address shown here to drop a question, and if I am able to help you, I will do so. What is it? Yeah. Then thank you very much for joining. Hope you enjoyed it and it was helpful for you.